Running a little late, but better late than never. Today is June 22nd. This is the Knoxville Transportation Authority board meeting. We need a determination of a quorum.
We have 5 members present. We have a quorum.
Very good. The minutes from May were distributed. Are there any questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion to approve. Is there a motion from Commissioner Hare? Second? Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Okay. Moving on to reports. I don't have anything to report from the chair perspective, but I'll make some time now for any commissioners who would like to share anything. Any commissioners have any comments? We are a mighty few, but all right, very good. Okay, we'll move on to staff. Mr. Thorne.
I just want to briefly update the board on May ridership. We had a total increase of 7% for the month of May. So that's really my only update.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Burton, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. No comments. I'm just going to defer along to the Kta Reimagined presentation.
Okay, very good. Moving right along. Any other new business? This is considered, or the Kta Reimagined discussion is considered old business. Any other items to add? Okay, well, let's get on with the old business. What's old is new. Kta Reimagined, we're still at this, and it's worth the wait. So, Mr. Thorne, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we're excited to maybe be coming to the end of this process, and that this board's going to have to make a decision, and hopefully that is today. But we do have Ricky here from Jarrett Walker and Associates, who's going to walk you through 3 different options. One of those options is the board moves forward with our previously drafted network. Option number 2 is that while adding Route 23, which will cover Washington Pike, the Walmart, O'Connor Senior Center, and we can add that route, but we'll have to reduce some Sunday frequency. That's option 2. And then option 3 is adding that route, but then asking City Council for additional funds to pay for that. I am going to allow Ricky to go through this presentation, answer any questions that the board has, but we are hoping to make a decision today that we can move forward in and go to the public with this and get some additional feedback.
And I would just add to that, what we're hoping is that the board will give us direction today, and that will give us the month of July to get back out to the public, let them know specifically what changes were made, what we were able to respond to as far as public comment, and then hold an official public hearing at next meeting in July to hear from the public about this final draft plan. And then, of course, if you all choose to vote in July, you can do that. We'll have a little resolution for you essentially saying you approve this plan. And then that's when we'll get to work and really do the details of routes and schedules and come back to you with all of that detailed stuff. But you would be approving a plan in concept either after the public hearing in July, or if you don't want to vote in July, it would be August. So that's kind of the process going forward, but anyway.
Yeah, we're just looking for direction from the board so we can go back out to the public. And then the board would make a decision, a final vote in either July or August.
And would there be another vote after that July or August vote before the plan gets implemented, or that's the last kind of vote by this body before that happens?
We will have more work to do. And so you're approving a plan. And what we're going to do, what our staff, we're all going to do is we're going to go and we're going to create every single one of these routes in detail, exactly what time it ends, exactly what time it starts, what those time points look like, how those time points interact with other time points, how does that affect people making transfers throughout the system? How does it truly, really affect people? And so it's those details that we're going to take step by step, and we will come back to you as a board with all of that detail, because that gives the public a chance to really see how is my route going to be affected, how is my trip going to be affected. And so we'll bring all of those details, an actual public route schedule to you for review and approval and public hearing and all that before we go through the implementation process.
And that would be in the fall or early next year?
Probably early next year, I
Okay.
think. We're
Yeah,
probably
the
thinking.
spring of next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
February, March, something like that, I think was our plan. I can't remember.
okay. Any questions or discussion on the process, Commissioner Durham?
So I guess two things. One, once we get into the details of it, are the details of it just the scheduling portion, or will it potentially include like a little bit of geographic wiggling of like actually instead of going on this block, it'll go north a block kind of a thing? Like I just want to make sure that whenever the public knows we've approved a draft, that they know whether or not the lines they see on the map are actually final or not, because I don't want people yelling at us if there's a chance that actually it might go a block over.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have spent this past month on the road looking at lefts and rights. And as Ricky goes through his presentation, we're spoiling all his thunder. He's going to show you a lot of those minor changes that we did as part of really going through the details. There was an instance where it's like, we really can't make that right turn. We've got to go up another block. So there's things like that we tried to get through. And so I think we've hit all of them. I can't say that something might change and we might, have to alter here or there, but pretty much the routing, what you're gonna see is pretty good chance that's what it's gonna end up being. So,
Okay,
we've gone through that process.
So details are more just the schedule.
Right, yeah, some of that detailed schedule work and
Okay.
Where like time points will be, how.
Oh, like what time the bus gets to a certain point. you mean?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes. And so a lot of that's internal for us. We've got to figure out where's a good place for an operator to pull over, where's a good safe place for a passenger to pick up, that kind of stuff. So that's where that work comes in.
And do you all expect to give us just kind of one wholesale report of like, here's all the schedules, or will it be kind of piecemeal, like here's 5 different route schedules in the January meeting that you're voting on, and then February is another 5 to 10 routes?
Right, that's a good question. I hope that we give you the whole package.
Okay.
Because part of the whole package is, while I mentioned how those transfers are going to work, how people are going to be able to connect from one bus to another and what that looks like for them in terms of time. So we won't have that full picture until we have the full packet. So I feel like we're just going to dump the whole thing on you.
Okay, cool, thanks.
So we had an initial draft plan. This is the revised draft plan, and at the very end, there will be one final plan for us to review.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And approve. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, you all already know me, but my name is Ricky Angueda, and I am a consultant with Jerry Walker & Associates. I am the project manager for CAD Reimagine from the consulting side. And so we've been helping you all through this process to rethink your bus network and to make it align better with the goals and priorities of your community. This is the chart that I've been showing for the process, the timeline. And so we are at the very end of this entire process where we're finalizing the final plan here. And so just to be thorough and go through a little bit of what we've gone throughout this project, we began by analyzing the existing system and looking at all of the existing conditions. That included looking at every route while looking at the entire system as a whole, looking at mapping route by frequency, looking at ridership by stop, ridership relative to cost, which is productivity, and looking at different land use parameters such as population density, employment density, just to determine the market and needs for transit in Knoxville. From there, we explored the ridership coverage trade-off, which you've all heard me talk about a lot. In a coverage concept, you're spreading out resources throughout a very large geography while trying to cover many places, but because you're spreading your service, you're spreading it out thinly, which means that a bus won't come very frequently, might only come every 60 minutes. In a ridership concept, you would be concentrating service on your densest, strongest corridors. And by doing so, a bus can come more frequently. You have less routes, but a bus can come every 15 minutes or so. To help you all understand what this looks like in the context of Knoxville, we developed some concepts. We developed the coverage concept and the ridership concept, as you can see here. We brought these over to the public. We showed them and explained to them the trade-off, and we asked them what they think. And so in the first public engagement phase, we learned that the public was leaning a little more towards ridership. We brought those results and all of our results from the existing conditions phase, we brought them to the KTA board, and you all voted to shift the balance between ridership and coverage more towards ridership. And so you all voted on a 70-30 split, allocating 70% of resources towards ridership and 30% towards coverage. From there, we took that direction to develop a draft plan. This is the pre-COVID network, which is our baseline for this project. And in all of our maps, the color of the lines signify frequency. Red lines are routes that come every 15 minutes or so, 15 minutes or better. Dark blue lines are routes that come every 30 minutes. And green lines are routes that come every 60 minutes. In your existing system, most of the main corridors have routes every 30 minutes, and then you have a lot of 60-minute service that is filling in all of the gaps in between. So we took the same amount of resources, and in a cost-neutral exercise, we came up with this draft network. The draft network that we already talked to the public about. But since I'm going to be showing you all the final draft network, I want to go through the draft network and then talk about the differences a little bit. So the draft network, the first thing that stands out in this map is the new red lines. The red lines means that a bus is coming every 15 minutes. And so those are Route 11 along Cumberland and Sutherland, routes 14 and 15 combined along 17th and Western, and Route 31 along Magnolia. In order to be able to provide this service, we did reduce frequencies and coverage in some places. So we reduced some frequencies in South Knoxville on the 40 and 45. We removed some service on the 19 along Lonas Drive. The Big 90 Orbital, we removed some of those segments, some of the squiggles on the 24, and we removed the 23 on Washington Pike. And we also simplified some of the areas to the east to be able to provide that 15-minute service on Magnolia. The other thing to note here is that Route 22 is a very good, very strong corridor, but here we have it as 30 minutes because there is a separate project from this, the Accelerated Bus Corridor Study, that is looking to turn this into 15-minute service. So in this plan, we have it as 30, but projected to be 15 in the future. In downtown, we did simplify services a little bit and consolidating a few of these lines. So this is the pre-COVID network. And instead of having all of these different trolleys, we consolidated those to have this downtown circulator, which comes every 12 minutes, all day, every day of the week. And apart from that, you also see the red lines that I talked about that are radiating out from downtown. So the 11 along Cumberland, the 14 and 15 along 17th, and 31, which eventually goes to Magnolia. Another layer of this that is not visible in those maps is the difference in weekend service. We invested a lot more into weekend service relative to what it is today, which is a shift towards ridership. This is Saturday service. The map on the top is showing the existing network, the pre-COVID network, and the map on the bottom is showing the draft network. These look pretty similar. You do see a little bit more blue along Central and a few other places, but the big difference is on Sunday. On Sunday today, you turn off about half of the routes, and the ones that stay on only run about every 60 minutes. In our draft plan, we kept the same amount of service from Saturday, which means that all of the routes are still on, and the two 15-minute routes go down to 30 minutes, but everything else is the same as weekday. From there, we did some analysis, including looking at how many residents are close to transit. And so when we measure residents that are near transit in the shift towards ridership, we see that there are less total residents close to any transit, but there is an increase in the residents that are close to 15-minute frequent service. Yes.
Yeah, quick question about that. So you may have said this in meetings past, and I've just forgotten. Does this number, specifically the 15 minutes or less number, does that include the Broadway corridor? And if it does not, is there a way to add that in? Because I think if that's coming, that's important to know. Because in just looking at it, my fear is that, and again, I love the system y'all have created, but my fear is that people will see like, oh, you've added 10% more people who don't have any access, and you've only added 7% more that have access to 15-minute service, which in my mind, it's like, I don't look at it as 7%. I say we've more than doubled it. It's great. but I just think it would be nice to also have that figure with Broadway. So I think if you all could get us that, I don't know if that's you or staff, but the two numbers I would like to see is that percentage with Broadway added in, and then if there is somehow a way to quantify that 42 to 52%, that 10% increase of people that don't have access, if there's a way to guesstimate the hard number of like, oh, that means there's 10,000 more people that don't have access, or that's whatever, because I just think that in selling this system, it's helpful to know like, yeah, maybe it went up 10%, but it's only like 2,500 people or something. So I think if there's a way to get those two numbers, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Sure. So these numbers don't include Broadway as every 15 minutes. Everything that we did for the draft plan is cost neutral, so it is the same resources that we used that are there in the pre-COVID network. So that's why Broadway isn't here. We could have some conversations offline about possibly doing that analysis, but it's not in here. And for the raw numbers, we do have them. I don't have them with me right now, so I can't give it to you, but we do have those raw numbers. But these are percentages based on the total population for Knoxville.
If we could go back to downtown. Sorry? Okay, I'll wait.
All right. And from there, the other analysis that we did was looking at the change in access to jobs. So we looked at how many jobs a person could get to in 45 minutes from anywhere in Knoxville, and we compared the draft network to the pre-COVID network. In this map, blue is an increase in access to jobs, red is a decrease, and the darker the color, the greater the change. And so you see on the map a lot of blue and a lot of dark blue, along especially the corridors where we increase the frequency. There is a little bit of red in some places where we decrease the frequency in South Knoxville, along Island Home Park as well. And then there's a few losses in access to jobs along Sequoia Hills, and a little bit up here where we realign the services on Merchant, and a little in the east because we increased the frequency on Magnolia, so we realigned some of those services. From there, we took the draft network and we went to the public. And in going to the public, we asked them what they think of this network if we have the network right. And the overall numbers for what we heard was that 52% of the respondents said that they agree that the network is better for the city as a whole. 22% were neutral, and 26% disagreed that the network would be better. Now, because we had that 26% that disagree, we took a more in-depth look to look at what those comments were specifically about to try to address a lot of those comments. But before I talk about the changes and those concerns, I just want to say that we heard a lot of very positive comments as well. Specifically, the positive comments that we heard were about the increases in frequency and about the weekend service, but in particular, the Sunday service. There were a lot of good comments and a lot of people that asked for even more frequency than what we were giving. So those were definitely some of the big comments that we got throughout the entire process. So showing the final draft network, this is the draft network, and then this is the final draft network. They look very similar. The differences in here are mostly addressing a few of those concerns and a few routing changes after we did some of our on-the-ground testing, like Belinda was mentioning before. And so I'll go through the changes one by one right now to make sure that we are being transparent and clear about those changes. In downtown, one of the changes that we did is that in the draft plan, we had routes that are going west, the 11 and the 1415 using Church. But we changed it back to Main and Cumberland as a couplet, which is what they do today, and it's easier to operate and it works a little better. So we kept it the way that it is today. The next change is the combination of routes 14 and 15. Before we had it weaving through here using 16th and Highland, but we consolidated that and made it a little simpler so that routes come from Cumberland and turn right into 17th. It is easier operationally, it's cleaner, and turning at that signal works a little better than going through the Fort Sanders neighborhood. So this improvement, mostly for routing purposes, this is what we did. The next one is Route 13, which we had going down Gay Street just like Route 20 does. And because that is a little duplicative of what Route 20 already does, we figure that it's easier to go across 5th and down Hall of Fame to get into Knoxville Station. All of these changes are cost neutral, I should say. None of these are costing anything. I'll mention if they do, but these don't. And this is just a little easier routing without having to go through Gay Street, and Gay Street already has 30-minute service with Route 20. That's where it was before.
Real quick before you move on.
Yes.
Aside from the cost neutral thing, which is probably why it does this, one of the things that has continuously confused me is the route the downtown connector takes. To me, I'm all for it connecting out to Austin, or not Austin East, to Austin Homes first. Thank you. Yes, to those homes. I guess what is the logic in the northern part of it looping where it does? I get why I kind of get why you're not taking it on Gay Street because of the whole duplicity thing. You don't want to repeat where there's service. But is there just kind of a rule of thumb of why you couldn't just make it loop, like a full loop? Because again, I guess I'm just trying to look towards the future and thinking, like, to me, it seems like a missed opportunity that we don't have any kind of a transit, a bus or a trolley or anything going by the future stadium site.
Right. Yeah, sure.
That's as close as we can get to the stadium site because of the way that the streets are going to change through there. We've been in talks with folks at the city, probably respond to this too, about the stadium, and we're looking at some different options, but that's going to be sort of the connection to the old city. By using Gay Street to Jackson and beyond is sort of that old city connection, and that's about as close as we can get consistently.
Because right now, what is that northern loop? Is that in front of the Regus and by
Yeah.
Taco Taco? Is that where it kind of?
Yeah, exactly. Which is what we're doing, something similar to that now, and has been mostly well received. That was a request we had quite a while back, but. Okay. There's also potential that, we may look at shuttle opportunities and things for specific stadium events, but those would be sort of a separate entity to connect to outlying parking.
So it's just an infrastructure issue around the stadium, basically. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Is now a good time to ask about the downtown connector? Okay. We haven't discussed whether the downtown connector will be free. So when do we want to discuss that?
Yeah, we have not had that discussion of whether it be free or not. We've had, throughout this process, we've talked about the possibility of it being free, but we have not made a decision on whether it's going to be free or not.
So when you're talking about cost neutral, are you considering it being free, or how?
Well, you bring up a great question because we've not actually come to grips or even asked the board to make made a recommendation to the board on whether we want to make this free or are we going to continue charging people for it.
Okay. And just, would we retire the trolley buses at some point?
What would happen with the trolleys is we would basically take the trolley package off of them and make them into a regular 30-foot, 35-foot bus. That's what would happen with them.
Okay. To be determined.
To be determined, that's
very
correct.
good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving out west, the next change here is today Route 17 along Sutherland does this on its outbound trip where it uses Division and Liberty to get close to the public defender's office. We removed that in the draft network. And we still intend to remove and keep the service on Sutherland, but there are needs of pedestrian infrastructure to improve the access from the intersection of Division and Liberty down to Sutherland. So we are including this slight deviation outbound only in the final draft network, but only until the pedestrian infrastructure improvements have been made.
So once there's pedestrian improvements eastbound, you're saying it will go up Liberty? Because isn't Division just a one-way west?
Right. So eastbound it stays on Sutherland.
Okay, so regardless, it stays
Yes.
eastbound. Okay,
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
Which is what happens today.
Okay. Also, I'm assuming it's just because of the way it worked out with the keeping cost neutral, but for 11 and then also the 14, 15, the specific locations where they split being 15-minute to 30-minute service, what was the rationale in those specific locations? Was it just that's as far as you could take it, financially without adding cost, or is there a certain, apartment complex or job opportunities there? Like, what's the rationale?
Sure. So 11, it goes out here with 15-minute service and not further because that's what we can afford. In the ridership concept, we did have it going out further, but in here, in the shift towards ridership, that's not as strong as it was in the ridership concept. That's as far as we could go. And the 14, 15 kind of happens organically because of the way that the 14 and the 15 go into downtown. And so the routes split there because of what they do after that. So that's the reason why we took advantage of that combination to have 15-minute service on Western and 17th going into downtown. Okay. Speaking of that turnaround of the 11 short line, that is something that we modified here a little bit. In the loop here, we're using Mohican instead of Carr Street for the turnaround because of what we learned when we were on the street and testing out the routes. So that's just a small change on what streets are used for the turnaround here. In Cedar Bluff, before we had Route 11 coming every 30 minutes and then continuing out every 60 minutes out to do the parts out here in Cedar Bluff on the west part here. That was a little confusing because we had the Route 11 as 15 minutes to a certain point, then 30 minutes, and then 60 minutes. It's complicated operationally as well. So we ended up deciding to combine that as part of the 13. And by doing it as part of 13, it's cleaner, it's easier, and it still provides the same access for riders that the Route 11 did, the way we had it drawn in the draft network. Because this outer segment costs one bus exactly. So we can separate that out from Route 11 and put it on Route 13, and people that are getting on a bus on Route 13 out here and want to continue on Kingston Pike, they can transfer and their travel time would be exactly the same. When we do the schedules, we would do it so that buses meet here at the same time, and people can transfer easily, and so the travel time and access will be the same. Yep. All right. Next is the turnaround in Route 20, out where the Walmart is. Today, this is what the route does. Before, we had it going up like this along Callahan. There is a signal to be improved here at this intersection. And so until that signal is improved and until a specific affordable housing development on Callahan is built, we are keeping the loop down through the Walmart. But when that intersection is fixed, then this will change to what we had in draft plan, doing the loop in the north instead of the south of Clinton. Route 21, the loop in the north end. Before we had it doing this, where it went on Plummer and then turned over. But in the route testing that we did, that indicated that driving along Plummer is challenging. And so this alignment is just a little easier for drivers to get through this loop.
And I will add, it takes us finally directly to the Inskip pool, which we were not serving directly before, and so that's there and back. So that's a nice little improvement
Is
as
that
well.
in the little bend there? Where is the Inskip?
Yeah, Inskip. Yeah, it's kind of in that little
Okay.
curvy area. And we had very little ridership on Plummer. It took a lot of time, And we had some operators expressing some concerns about it, so we felt like that was a win-win.
Is that little pinch point between 21 and 20 a transfer? Would you be able to transfer there? Like where where 21 comes in and then 20 kind of bumps out a bit? Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
Right here.
it'd probably be on up a ways. We're looking at some pedestrian improvements near Breda Road, but yeah, just slightly south of that where the 21 goes.
You could transfer between them.
We
up
are
there.
hoping so. Right
Okay.
now, I wouldn't want to try it because traffic is dangerous.
Sure.
We need to work, we've asked for some pedestrian improvements there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think transfers will be possible between those.
Right. Like I mentioned before, for the little triangle in Route 11 by the Public Defender's Office, as part of this, we are coming up with a list of key pedestrian improvements and prioritizing those. And so this intersection here will be high on that list. All right. Next is the turnaround for Route 31. This is also another case in which we had changed the direction of the loop a little bit here, and because of that, some areas down here have the bus stop on the other side of the street compared to what they do today. And so it's just another of those cases where we'll put on the list of pedestrian improvements to add crosswalks here so that Burlington Commons can reach the stop safely and cross Holton.
Why is it that Route 36 seems to serve an individual cul-de-sac?
This here,
Yes.
that is the next thing I'm going to talk about. That's
Okay.
Golden Age.
It's what?
Golden Age retirement community.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so it goes in there just because of the geography. So it is sort of a coverage thing that it's, it's not ideal, but it has to be done because of the way that things are built. And so the one thing that we did change here is that after it goes to Golden Age, on its way to the Kirkwood Super Stop, before we had it going into Fern, but this intersection here is a little troublesome. You're going up a hill, you can't really see clear to the sides. So we just realigned this is what it was doing before. So we realigned it so that it goes west on Skyline a little bit, one block, and then up on Oakland. So another small change mostly for easier operations, safer operations. All right. The next change is to Route 35. Before we had Route 35 on Wilson and staying on Wilson all the way to Oakland and then the Kirkwood Superstop. Here is the Austin East High School, and throughout the engagement process, we heard some concerns about safety around the Austin East High School. We had the bus on the backside of the school, but there are security and safety concerns about people walking that block back to Wilson. And so to make it safer for people from the school that are using the bus, we decided to go up onto Martin Luther King Jr. We're going up on Harrison and then using MLK to get to the Kirkwood Superstop. We are removing the service from Wilson to do that, but because it is a safety concern that we heard a lot from the public, this is the best that we can do.
What's the motivation and logic behind not just keeping 35 on MLK the entire route?
Ideally, we want to keep it on Wilson because that's slightly wider route spacing. So when you have wider route spacing, you serve more people, and you provide more service to more people, right? The people that live around here now have to walk a little farther to get to MLK. So ideally, what we want to do is keep it on Wilson all the way. We're not keeping it on MLK just to try to provide some service here to Wilson. This isn't ideal, but it's important because we want to address those safety concerns.
I'm assuming then right there, kind of like at Ben-Hur where 5 Points is, that's also a transfer between 35 and 36?
Here, yeah.
No, down. Yeah, like right there you could transfer.
Well, a person would probably be able to transfer between buses, but I don't think that buses would line up there at the same time.
Okay, but I mean, just in terms of the infrastructure and the fact the buses would go by the same place.
By the same place, yes.
Right there. Okay.
And to be clear, that's the heart of 5 Points. That's all of the new redevelopment that KCDC's been doing. So we're running through the heart of that. That's the senior living area and also the redeveloped area. And that's why those are kind of
Well, and that's why I was
below
asking
MLK.
if it, in theory, there's a transfer, like you could hop. Okay, great.
This orange line shows what we were doing before with the 35. Okay, so now the big topic that we need some direction on. Some of the bigger concerns that we heard from the public were the access to the O'Connor Center, which is just a short walk from Magnolia, access to Broadway Towers, and then the loss of Route 23 along Washington Pike and Millertown Pike. Those were the bigger comments that we heard throughout the engagement process, and so we've been thinking a little bit about how we can address those comments. The one that we can address in a cost-neutral scenario without changing anything else is Broadway Towers. So Broadway Towers is right here, and the previous alignment that we had for Route 15 was going up Broadway a little bit and then across Washington Pike. We changed that to go down on McCroskey, which goes right by Broadway Towers, and then goes up to go to Washington Pike. And so in doing this slight shift, we can provide service to Broadway Towers. And that would be a cost-neutral solution that doesn't change anything else. But that only addresses the Broadway Towers portion of this. And it could be your choice to adopt this final draft network with only this change as it is. Yeah.
Sorry, a lot of questions. So same kind of question as before. So if you look right there, it's on Route 15, where you see Glenwood, where the route kind of like pops up, and there's like go up a bit to your left, and there's a little kind of like like a little pimple on the line. Yeah. So I get that you're probably doing that again to allow people a shorter walk to the bus. But again, my question, I guess, is like, why is it there as opposed to like a few blocks further towards Central, so it's more in the center of that neighborhood? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
That's the city safety center.
Is that why? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's the new, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's up
No.
Steep Hill.
Okay.
Okay. So here, in terms of what you could do for Broadway Towers, you could, we have deviated Route 15 a little bit on McCroskey to be able to provide service there. And that's what we have in the final draft plan. So the next thing that we could do is to add a new route, but this wouldn't be cost neutral because we're already using what we have available for the budget. And so there's a possibility for a new Route 23, which would address all of these points. And so that new Route 23 would come out of downtown into Magnolia by the front of the O'Connor Center, weave its way over to Broadway Towers, then get onto Washington Pike, and continue on to Millertown Pike to end at the Walmart. So that is the Route 23 that we have drawn to try to address all of these concerns. We did a little bit of analysis on this as well, and in doing the proximity analysis that we have shown before, the number of people that are covered by this route isn't enough to change a percentage point. So this is the one for the draft network. This would still be 12% for the people near 60-minute service. It does increase a little bit, but it's less than 1%. I think it was like 0.2% or so.
Can you remind me where most of the Broadway Towers residents ride to and from?
They are quite interested in reaching the Walmart and downtown as well.
Wasn't there two bus lines they left from that Walmart? One was 23 and went down Millertown Pike, and didn't another bus take a different route, both to the transit?
You're talking about currently?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of have a similar situation currently where our Route 33 goes up to that area, and then becomes the 23. So they're all sort of interconnected up on the east side. So both the 33 and the 23 could get to the Walmart East.
Yeah, I knew the 33, but when they leave that Walmart, one became 23, correct, and went down, and another one went out. I'm trying to think of which was. They both ended up connecting downtown, but they were two different route numbers. Will we still have that other bus that services at Walmart and heads downtown for those other neighborhoods, or when 23 is gone, will that bus stop at Walmart be completely gone?
Oh, no, the Walmart will still have service whether
Okay.
the 23 is there
Right.
or not. Yeah, that would be what number is that?
So we
one
have
that comes
the
from
15 and the 35 both go to that Walmart, and they are designed in a way that something similar to what's happening today will continue to happen, where the bus that's coming into Walmart as Route 15 will leave as Route 35, and the other way around. And so there will be service to the Walmart every 30 minutes by each of those routes, and they both go to downtown, taking different directions.
Well, I was just trying to think, if we picked up the passengers at Broadway Towers with the Broadway bus looping in, how long would it take them? They trying to find a way to please everybody, because it seemed to me
Right.
that Broadway Towers was the main complaint with 23. But like Tom's pointing out, if the main goal of 23 for the people of Broadway Towers is to get to Walmart, see where I'm going with this? Was to get to Walmart. Could they hop on the Broadway one? I mean, we're talking about a 20-minute ride. I was just making sure there was another access. If they want to get to that Walmart, it might require going to a transit and getting on a bus, but that's something to consider if we're going to be looking at that versus how much we have to take off of a Sunday to keep 23, and something just I was wondering about.
So if we change the routing on Route 15 the way that we did for this final draft plan, that would go by Broadway Towers, and Route 15 actually does go to Walmart at one end and downtown on the other. So just by doing that slight deviation, we are satisfying most of the concerns that people from Broadway Towers have. So with Route 23, like I mentioned, it doesn't shift coverage enough to make a difference in these charts. It is less than a percentage. And the other thing I'll mention is that Route 23, what we have costed, which I'll show what it costs in Sunday service and in dollars, we only did it by running Route 23 Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. every 60 minutes. So it's not as much service as all the other routes. It's just Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And now to see what that costs in Sunday service, let me show you the pre-COVID network first. This is the Sunday service that you're running today, running pre-COVID, where you only have about half the routes and they run every 60 minutes. In this table, I'm not sure if you've seen one of these tables before. They were in the report. I'm not sure if I presented them. But each column is a different hour of the day, and each row is a route. And so the colors are the same as in the maps. So green on this map is every 60 minutes, green on this chart. This is Sunday service in the final draft network. You can see how much better it is. This is as good as it is on Saturdays and almost as good as it is on weekday, except that we're turning the 15-minute routes down to 30. The blue is every 30 minutes and the red is every 15 minutes. Also, the trolleys don't run on Sunday today, and we have the downtown circular running every 12 minutes.
Wow.
And so this is a huge improvement over what it is today. So shifting that to the left here and showing you what we need to take away from Sunday service to run that Route 15. It would look like this. We need to bring down all of the, all of these 60-minute routes down, all of these 30-minute routes down to 60 minutes, starting at 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So that's why this shifts from blue to green. And we also need to completely move down from 30 to 60 minutes 2 routes. And we did that for the 11 long line and for Route 14. And in doing so, you can see that the combination of Route 14 and 15 every 15 minutes goes down to 30 minutes. So in reducing all of this service, we're able to afford Route 23, as I mentioned, Monday to Friday, running for 13 hours a day.
I assume you chose the evening on Sunday because that's the least amount of ridership.
Yes, and because it reflects closer to what it is today. So our two options are basically to either reduce frequencies on all day, all week service, or reduce weekend service, or specifically Sunday service, since compared to what it is today, that's where you could reduce service. Those were the big improvements in moving towards ridership. If you were to, yeah,
Can
another
you
question?
show again the pre-COVID Sunday versus the final plus 23 Sunday? That's not the pre-COVID there on the left. Do you have a view that,
Oh, you want to see,
is that it there? Yeah, okay.
this is pre-COVID here.
Right, but that's not the final plus 23 on the right, is it?
No. I can do that quickly.
We don't have the pre-COVID Sunday in our packet, or I would do the, what's it called where you flip the thing and the creatures move? I've been reading kids'
flip
books,
book,
so,
yeah.
yeah. There's a name for that. I don't know what it is.
Right. There you go. That's what you wanted to see, right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think there's a difference between, when you're just looking at good versus great, you obviously want great, but if you look at great versus poor,
Right.
or good versus poor, good looks really good.
Right.
Thank you.
So the other option here would be to find more funding for this additional service. In doing so, you would be able to keep that Sunday service and put in the Route 23. But just so you have an idea of what that cost, if you have this new Route 23 that we drew, Monday to Friday, every 60 minutes, running for, that's 11 hours a day, it would cost about $277,000 a year, more or less.
This is a
Sorry.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say this is, I guess, more of a question for you, Tommy, but also maybe staff. Where does the city's funding for our buses come from? What pool of money? Like, if we were to, as a board, direct, city council to find us more money, like what do you all as city council have to look at in terms of what portion of the budget would that money come from?
The general operating budgets.
Okay.
Am I right?
And let me clarify, we do not direct that money come from the
request.
city. We request very politely.
Tomato.
So, this says Monday through Friday. I thought the 277 covered it, the great version of Sunday. This is,
Oh, I mean so if you were to keep Sunday service the way that we have it in the final draft plan, and you were to put in Route 23 running like this, it would cost $277,000. Not running Saturday or Sunday or evenings for Route
That's
23.
keeping all of our fruit and adding some more. Yeah, we're not giving up anything. We're getting, money fixes everything.
So
Yeah,
you're saying
that's-
that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what he's saying is, just keep all the pieces of the puzzle. Give me $270,000 more a year, and I'll keep everything you've seen. You get all the buttons, all the whistles, nothing gets cut.
so the slide that says new Route 23, the other slide that says that, I think the previous one, with the map,
Oh, the map. Right.
yeah, this is not cost neutral, correct? Or it is cost neutral?
So it depends on what you do. If you reduce Sunday service, this is cost neutral. If you keep Sunday service as we have it in the final draft plan, you need more money.
Okay, that's what I was confused about. This, okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
this
so
is the
let me explain it this
277,
way.
right?
No, this is the free version.
Well, if we keep the Sunday service, plus that map is the 277, right?
So let me explain the options this way. The first option is this network, the final draft network, without Route 23 and keeping all the Sunday service. This is cost neutral. Another cost neutral option, option 2, is to add Route 23 and remove some Sunday service. That's option 2. Option 3 is the one that's not cost neutral, and that would be adding Route 23 with more money. So keeping all the Sunday service.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
How many different people would benefit from Route 23?
How many
Would-
people benefit?
How many different people you estimate a year or within a year would use that?
So in terms of how many people would be covered by Route 23, in the proximity analysis that we ran, it's less than 1%. And so it's about 0.2% of the population of Knoxville that gets service with the addition of Route 23. In addition, it goes by O'Connor Center and Broadway Towers, which doesn't add any more coverage because they're already really close to other service. Even O'Connor Center is just a very short walk from Magnolia, so adding Route 23 doesn't really cover them more. It's more of a concern from the public.
So option 2 addresses most of the concerns of the public by introducing Route 23.
Right.
And the Sunday service included in option 2 is much better than it is today.
It is much better, yes.
Okay. All cost neutral.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're all pretty clear. Number 3's off the table. If I'm not mistaken, they're having trouble with staffing the buses that they have now. Is that correct? You guys having trouble getting drivers, or are you back good on that one?
No, we're still struggling to get drivers.
Gosh, I'm
We're still in
sitting
a
here
workforce
I'm sitting
shortage.
here wondering if we go get 260,000, 270,000 more than a bunch of buses, who's going to drive the darn thing? Okay. So 1 and 2 is what we're looking at. I think
Yeah.
you put 3 up. I kind of thought.
So basically the trade-off here is whether you in the community value more having a coverage route that is not likely to get many riders, but a few people really care about, as we saw in the engagement phase, or if you care more about really good Sunday service that's going to be useful to a lot of people. You're still having an improvement in Sunday service, but getting to that all-day frequencies that we saw. That's the trade-off.
And again, just so that we can still pick up Broadway Towers with 15
Yes.
and then keep Sunday service. That's if we pick up Broadway Towers with 15, then we got full Sunday service. So that's what we could. And it was only a month, I know, but I rode 23 every day for quite a few weeks. And I'm just saying on that June that I was riding the buses, Broadway Towers was pretty much where people got on Millertown Pike and Washington Pike. In between that Walmart and Broadway Towers, I didn't see and again, if somebody's watching this and you've ridden that bus, I apologize. Just the 2 or 3 weeks that I was on it, that's where the traffic came from, and there wasn't a lot of people standing on the road to catch a ride from that Walmart from Washington Pike to Broadway Towers. So that's where I'm thinking you're showing the low ridership. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a couple things. One is with the cost neutral 23 change, I do want to be clear, that does not go into Broadway Towers. It drives McCroskey. So that's, not going to have a sheltered waiting. It's a different experience that we just need to be aware of, that's going to be different than what it is now.
Oh, so 15 would not go into Broadway Towers.
It goes next to it on the road, on McCroskey. And
What is that foot distance, or what is that experience like?
They do have some sidewalk access to McCroskey. McCroskey is steep, and if you're coming into town, you'd have to cross McCroskey, and so we'd probably need to request some pedestrian infrastructure to make that more feasible. It's on-street parking. We'd have to figure out where the bus could board people, that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of a classic sort of neighborhood street that we'd have to address. And
None of the options, sorry, one more. None of the options go into Broadway Towers.
yes, the new Route 23 would go
Okay.
into Broadway Towers as it does now.
Okay.
So that would be the difference between those two.
Yeah, the current 23 goes
Right.
into Broadway.
Exactly, it would be the
So
same.
if we keep 23, 15 can't get in, 23 can.
Right, exactly, yeah. And 23, generally speaking, is about in the middle of our ridership range. It's kind of, it's not one of our lowest performing routes, it's sort of in the mid-range. Not our best, but not our worst.
And do we know roughly the average boardings at Broadway Towers? Like, are we talking 20 people or like 400?
I think it was average 10 a day, but I can't remember if that's both directions. I think that might have been both directions.
Yeah, I think we discussed that because we were looking at the time that we took the sample was like between October to February, some of the colder and probably wetter months. And again, I wrote it in June, I think we're all on the same page. If we can salvage Broadway Towers, we bet, that's in, but I just, from that standpoint, of looking at keeping Sundays and are going with good to bad, or going with the regular.
I think overall we've obviously made a commitment to more frequency than coverage. I think the ability to keep 23 shows a little bit of flexibility in that we've listened to folks and solving multiple problems at once. I think I'm inclined to support the 23 with good Sunday service.
That's where I'm leaning.
Yeah. Is there any discussion go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think regarding Route 23, whatever we as a committee or board or whatever we're called, whatever we decide, I think we also need to, again, I don't know if it's direct, but make council and engineering and whoever aware that there are some severe impediments to pedestrian ability, because I drive that all the time to get to Target and stuff because I live just off of Woodland. And so I feel for the people riding that route because like half the time they're just standing on the curb and I'm afraid I'm going to hit them. And so like whether we decide to add Route 23 or not, I think that we should make it imperative to, direct whoever's in charge of it that this route needs to be a priority for new sidewalks. Because if there's no bus route, which I would prefer there would be, but if there's no bus route, I do not want to see people walking beside that road because it's just way too dangerous.
Staff, do you have a recommendation between 1 and 2? Or
My strong recommendation would be either option 1 or 2, because it gives staff a direct initiative, because going to council and asking for money, we would not find that out until late next year. So again, I think option 1 or 2 would be my preference. I think 2 fixes addresses a lot of the concerns that we heard from the public, and that is adding back in Route 23. And again, as you said, Chairman, we go from some poor Sunday service to very good Sunday service.
Mm-hmm.
Can Lyft take care of our riders at Broadway Towers?
For the Lyft service, people have to apply for it they have to have a disability. So it just depends on what their disability and whether or not they would qualify for the service. So
Is there room on that bus?
that depends on what day it is. But we don't we take the applications, we have to go on based on what the doctor is saying about that individual rider. So we don't have a choice in whether or not we can deny or accept an application for the service. So, but you have to qualify for it.
Ricky, in the summary of the previous draft, there was a long list of improvements of 16% increase to access to jobs, 20% increased access to jobs for low income.
Right.
Have any of those percentages changed as a result of this second draft?
We haven't run a full access analysis, but they should not change. The changes that we're doing here are
Marginal.
not. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
marginal. They're not substantial enough to change those numbers by more than a percentage.
Okay. Any other discussion? Well, we need to provide staff with some direction. I'm hearing number 2 floated most frequently by the commissioners that have spoken. We need to discuss any disagreement with that now.
If we could just clarify exactly what that is for the audience and the public.
Who wants to give it a shot?
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. So what you all would be directing us to present to the public would be the final draft network, which are the changes that Ricky mentioned, Austin East, Main Street, some of those other Liberty, some of those other changes, with the addition of a new Route 23 that covers O'Connor, Broadway, Millertown, Washington to Walmart, with a reduction in Sunday frequency to accommodate that.
Reduction from the original draft.
From the, yes, from
Okay.
the,
Which is still better
The
than.
original draft. They don't want to think of.
Yeah. With a good improvement
Right.
on Sunday.
Yeah. I was thinking to say, unless they're watching this, why do we have to mention a reduction? Look at this fine Sunday service. Why can't
Yeah.
we look at the glass half full for
yeah, and not as fabulous
Yeah, look
improvement,
at
but
the
still a
glass
great
half full
improvement
for
in
a
Sunday
change. Look at
service.
this fine Sunday
Agreed.
service, plus we kept 23.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
Okay. Is that a motion to approve
That's
that
my
option?
motion
All
to
right.
approve.
Second.
I'll have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Are there any people signed up to speak? Okay.
Ms. Valentine, do we have any public speak? Okay, no public forum today. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, unanimous consent for that. So in July, you'll bring back to us that amended draft.
And we will have a public hearing to see if there are any public comments related to that after we've explained this to the public after today.
Very good. And your thoughts about explaining it to the public, what does that look like?
So we're working on the details of that, but we're certainly going to do an extensive news release that explains bullet by bullet what items we responded to that we heard in the first draft. We'll have the updated map available for viewing. We'll be doing social, we'll be putting things on our buses. We'll be doing, I'll do that email to all of the stakeholders that we've been involved in through this whole process. Anyone that's come to public events, if I have their contact info, they will get all of this info too. And I'll probably make some phone calls because I don't have emails for everybody. So just anybody who's been involved before, plus just a general public process.
Would it be possible to have someone a couple days at this station with a kind of table to be available for questions? They don't have to take a survey, but just having a table, since that's the majority of where the foot traffic is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a question about your route? Come, let me show you what's, is that okay?
We could do that.
Okay.
Definitely. And we'll be sure our customer service desk staff is also asking questions too. And
Okay.
anybody who has time who comes to
Okay.
the desk. Yeah.
It's hard to replicate the effort we did on the first drafts, but I think if that's the hub where we can catch more people, then it's a good spot to catch people.
I want to say thank you to everybody that got all this minutia together, ground it up, and came out with something that I feel like great for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for really listening to what the people said and coming up with something that had a good common sense approach. It was easy to vote on.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Appreciate that.
And Ricky, you'll run those numbers again, just the improvement numbers in terms of access to jobs? Those
The access, yes, we can run that.
Okay.
Just lose that first Sunday service thing before. Just let that one get lost somewhere. Just put the old pre-COVID and the new one out.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, we don't have anybody signed up for public forum. Our next meeting will be here on July 27th, and we are adjourned.